Hello, and welcome to Lightways at Life Astrologer with me, Anna Isabel. And I'm delighted to introduce Anita Chakraburtty. Hello, Anita.
Hi, Anna. Thank you for having me on your podcast. It's a great honor to be here.
Well, I couldn't resist because one of my favorite topics is medical astrology, and I am absolutely fascinated by it. And you were giving a talk for the Brighton group on astrology and herbs. So here you are.
Yeah, well, I was very blessed that Stella invited me to give a talk on astrology and herbs, and I'm a full-time naturopath. Yes, I'm a full-time herbalist nutritionist, and I'm also full-time astrologer as well. So I'm a member of the Astrological Lodge of London. I've done some talks for them, and great to meet you via all these herbal astrological coincidences.
Yes, indeed. Well, I think maybe it might be good to remind people about how this link between herbs and astrology evolved.
Well, I don't know exactly who started it. One might think it might have happened in Mesopotamia and the Babylonians, but my knowledge really comes from a few different people, quite ancient people. So Dioscorides, who was a famous, he was a army doctor initially, and he worked with the Romans, but he was a botanist as well. But he was there around the time of Caesar, and he wrote a very big book which was called On Herbs, which was a treatise on herbal medicine. And it wasn't just describing the plants and the medicinal use. He would also describe the equipment you needed to sort of distill herbs. And he talked about different sort of astrological rulerships with regards to herbs. Then you've got Paracelsus, who was around in sort of like the early 1500s. And he was a physician, he was an alchemist, he was a theologian. And he learned herbal medicine from his dad, just in Switzerland, wandering around the Alps. And then he did travel extensively through Europe and ended up becoming a lecturer in Basel in Switzerland. And quite radically, he was lecturing in German rather than Latin, because he wanted herbal medicine and all this information to be accessible to normal people. But he also was very much about the that hermetic principle, as above so below, and how the astrology and the planets are obviously connected to the herbs as well. And then you've got Galen, which he's the one that derived the humoral theory. He was born in Turkey, and I think up until the 1800s, his principles were being used by doctors, around the world. So he came up with a humoral theory, which is all about, black bile being connected to earth and melancholy, and then phlegmatic is more water and the moon, and choleritic is yellow bile. So that kind of fits in with the, planetary elements. And then you've got Nicholas Culpeper, who wrote, The Complete Herbal, where that kind of went into even more detail about herbs and the link with astrology and different planets. But I don't know where the original spot on source where everyone can go, it was that's where it started. I don't know where the Big Bang theory started with regards to astrology and herbs, but they're kind of the people that were a factor in amalgamating those two branches of the herbs and the astrology.
It seems natural to me that this would evolve over many centuries. And when you think about the doctrine of signatures, how you could see that people are making associations between what they see in the plant and the part of the body. And we've already got associations going on between heaven and the body. And so it makes sense that there would then be a link somewhere between plants and the heavens. So
And I think, sorry to interrupt you, Anna, but I think in more ancient times, you know, if you were taught herbal medicine, it was in conjunction with astrology. The two were completely linked. And then again, I don't know exactly why or how, but over time that linkage started to become a little bit more separate for whatever reason. Perhaps when everything got a little bit more sciencey in the, you know, 1700s, and maybe that's when herbal medicine grew in terms of, you know, that connection with health and different plants with different health, and then astrology was getting a bit perhaps pushed away from health and more, obviously it's connected to medical astrology, but there might have been, you know, perhaps that's where the separation is. I don't know exactly when they separated, but they were very unified in ancient times. You'd study both.
It strikes me actually that it may have been a pragmatic move to ditch the astrological side of it, just to be able to be practicing as herbalists. I think that there would have been a great deal of pressure, and it would have happened over time. But I think it's almost like a prerequisite to practice herbalism, that you're not involved with that weird stuff, because you want to prove that there is a biochemical science behind it in order to be able to continue to practice. So I think that,
and there might have been a religious aspect to it as well, you know, obviously with the Catholic Church, at least, you know, although, you know, we know that Easter is an astrological timed, that date is set by astrology, but yeah, there could have been that aspect to it, that if you don't want to fall foul of the Catholic Church, so therefore maybe keep quiet about the astrology and just do the herbal medicine, which the Catholic Church were fine with.
Absolutely. And I think it's church. It wasn't always the way. I mean, we do have astrological clocks on churches. It wasn't always the way, but there came a rift between doctrine and, let's say, doctrine and divination. And so again, I think people who were practicing herbalists may have had to be very pragmatic in their approach. So that's the historical side.
And I would say, obviously, again, probably a lot of women were herbalists in the village. And then around the times when, you know, you could be perceived as witchcraft, then if you were just doing herbal medicine, you were probably okay. But again, if you were like, that connection with astrology might have put you in a little bit more danger. So again, this is not based on any firm evidence that I know. It's just a supposition that perhaps that might have been another reason why astrology got a little bit separate from herbal medicine.
Yes, and there is plenty of evidence that many herbalists who were practicing just helping their kinfolk and their neighbors were also doing folk astrology. So it would have been the phases of the moon, following the phases of the moon, the seasons, etc. That was part of the lore, the herb lore that they would have had passed on through centuries. And these would have been primarily women because they were less likely to have the formal education that would have taken them into a formal medicine route. So yes, I think you're right there. So that's the more historical perspective. Where are we now? How are you doing this? How are you blending your practice as a naturopath with astrology?
In a very, very minor way, and I'll give you reasons why. So if I get contacted in my role as a naturopath by someone, for example, I won't mention names, but a couple of recent clients are women, one lady with a 12-year-old son, another lady with an 18-year-old son, and coincidentally both sons have had vomiting issues, just like completely unexplained. The 18-year-old ended up in A&E on 2 occasions over 3 months. the 12-year-old has had this condition since he was 9 years old. He's missed a lot of school. There's been, you know, stress on holidays. Is he going to be vomiting on holidays? So when both women contacted me as a naturopath, both very stressed with the health of their sons, both sons missing school, so it's going to impact their education and their life. I don't feel comfortable talking about astrology because that might put the client off. It's like, my son's been in A&E. Why are you asking about his zodiac sign? So if I have a discussion about astrology, that happens later down the track because I get to have a relationship with the client and get to know them better. But fortunately, by the time we may have that discussion, the client, whether it's the client in front of me or you know, their child, has gotten better. Therefore, the need for herbal medicine is not necessary. And then the discussion around astrology tends to be more about life and life decisions, you know, and what may happen in the future. So for me, this kind of synergy with astrology and herbal medicine is more of a hobby knowledge thing for me. But obviously there must be some connection to me in my past lives where perhaps I was, you know, burnt for being a witch, you know. So there might be that resistance in me in, you know, really going hell for leather and, you know, amalgamating the two, you know. But even from you know, like a data perspective, you know, like GDPR, you know, where you have to be careful with what data you collect, you know, it's okay for me to ask the date of birth of a client as a naturopath because things change as we age. And you know, some people look really well, you think they're 30 and they tend to be 50. Yeah, but are you coming to me your periods? Is it perimenopause or is it, are you 30? You know, so I do, no one minds if I say what's your date of birth. Yeah, but if I were to go, what's your city of birth, and the client says, what do you need that information for, then from a legal perspective, as a naturopath, I don't need to know their town of birth. So that could get me into a little bit of hot water. Why are you asking the town? Yeah, the city. And then obviously if I would have asked, oh, do you know your birth time? Again, that's going to get... So yeah, this is just me and my own sort of resistance. And also I've got a code of ethic as a naturopath, you know, so I've got to follow it. I'm a registered naturopath. I'm insured up to £6 million, and there's code of ethics of how we practice. So again, I have to be a little bit cautious. So in a roundabout way, what I'm trying to tell you, Anna, is I don't fully integrate both practices in my health and wellness business.
So let's go back to the link then between herbs and signs and planets. What herbs, how would you do that? Okay, let's say, how would you use that knowledge in your own personal life?
So for me, this is a sort of a theoretical information gathering I've been doing for a few years to then at a future point amalgamate the two fully and just kind of go out in the world, like, you know, in a bombastic way. Yeah. But look, for me, so I'm an Aries sun, okay? And I know that, you know, there's that heat, there's that inflammatoriness with Aries, okay? That hot sort of Martian. And I, as an individual, I love eating spicy food, okay? And then I know that when I have periods where I'm really into eating a lot of chilies and cinnamon, that can make me a little bit more argumentative and bossy. And it, you know, it does promote the Aries Mars in me. And then I realized, oh, I'm turning into a right old piece of work at the moment, so I need to drill this down a bit. So I, you know, I might then think, okay, well, I still want to eat the chili, but I might use more cooling foods like cucumber, which is a lunar herb. Yeah, well, a lunar plant. Yeah, it's more cooling, it's more moistening if I really want to still keep eating the chili. Yeah. Or I might just go, do you know what, I need to ditch it, and to cool me down I'm going to use something like peppermint. Yeah. So again, peppermint is a more cooling herb that will, you know, dampen down the Aries in me. Okay, so that might be one aspect where I would use it. In a theoretical scenario, you know, I could look at transits that are coming up, you know, in the future and think, okay, I've got some Jupiter transits, you know, maybe I should be looking at some more, you know, Jupiter ruled herbs and including that. So, you know, fig, you know, fig leaves, fig trees, they're, Culpepper said they're Jupiterian herbs. Yeah. And you know, someone who's half Italian, my mum in London, her garden is just like massive fig trees, 3 massive fig trees, and we feed the street with them, you know, they're like this big. Yeah. But yeah, the milk from the fig tree is good for warts. Okay. And the actual leaves are good for like bruises and falls, you know. And I know if I have more Jupiter transits, I'm probably more likely to be not very naturopathic, and I'm more likely to have a few drinks when I go out with friends. And I might be more likely to stumble in on the way home. So, you know, perhaps having a stash of dried fig leaves might be useful to put on my bruises. So, you know, in a theoretical way, and I'm making a joke, but look, you know, if I've got Jupiter transits coming up and I know I'm going to be more indulgent in what I eat, then as a herbalist, I might go, do you know what? I need to have more dandelion root in my tinctures, yeah, to work on liver, because I know I'm going to be overindulging in alcohol a bit more, socializing a lot more, having more rich foods because I'm socializing more fatty foods. So again, I'd use on a personal level more dandelion root and more liver based tinctures, you know. In my dispensary I might use andrographis, which has got immune, you know, benefits as well if I'm having late nights, and that's going to be a stressor and affect your immune system. So yeah, these are kind of some sort of, you know, I don't really get sad in winter, but I know some people do. But if, you know, on some of those dark gloomy winter days where you're putting the light on at lunchtime, I might take a more solar herb, you know, for a few days. So St. John's wort, if you think of the colour, that yellow colour, it's very much connected to the sun. And, you know, it's good for low mood. And there are some studies that say that it's good for SAD, which is seasonal affective disorder. So people that are, you know, sensitive when there's low light in winter. But saffron, you know, like having saffron tea with the strands, like when it's been, you know, a week of gloom, which we have now and then when it's winter, and you know, I really don't like having to put the light on in the daytime, not just because of cost of living, but for me, it's just, I feel the sun should be filling the room, not this electric light. And I'll make saffron tea, yeah. And saffron is a mood booster. There's lots of clinical trials to show that it's a good antidepressant. But again, it's a solar herb, you know, it's ruled by the sun, and even that cup of that bright orange just kind of makes you feel a little bit more happy and joyous. So, you know, there are some sort of ways in which I might use planetary rulerships and herbs. You know, there's lots of different ways. You know, for sleep, valerian is good for sleep. Valerian is a mercurial herb, yeah, and mercurial is when that nervous system is just like overwrought, yeah, and you're lying in bed and you're thinking of all the stuff you need to do the next day. So, you know, a cup of valerian tea, which is mercury ruled, can kind of dampen down that kind of busy mercurial brain and just slow things down and help for a restful night's sleep.
It's you almost lost me as with Jupiter and figs, because my eyes glaze over at the thought of figs, and hearing about your mother's wonderful fig trees. I am so there. But it makes sense to me, the idea of figs being a Jupiterian plant, because of the generous abundance of the plant itself. That's so again, it's showing. I did wonder though, I think whether there might also be a link with Venus, because there has been this association between the fruit and
Fertility.
and fertility and the physical side of love, if we can put it like that. So
But also the way that, you know, biblically Adam and Eve were covering themselves with fig leaves. And if
yeah,
you open the fruit, it's full of seeds, which, you know, edible seeds, not like, you know, in a watermelon, you're not going to eat those seeds directly. You probably have to prepare them in a different way. But yeah, it's like, and I think in some Mediterranean countries, you know, gifts of figs and pomegranates are given to married couples, you know, as a fertility sign. So I do, yeah, I'm just quoting Culpeper really, and he just mentioned
yes,
Jupiter and figs and the fig leaves, and you know, and for me it's like, you know, my mum's figs in the garden are literally like this big.
yeah,
And yeah, we feed the whole street, and yeah, look, she's, you know, she's getting to be an old lady, and sometimes when her skin looks a little bit funny, you know, she'll say, oh, what's all this, what are these marks, I haven't done anything. And I'll just get the fig leaves from the garden, boil them up and leave it in a glass in the bathroom and go, right, you know, bathe your skin with it. But
I
then that, to me, obviously that's not so much Jupiterian, because she's not got a bruise, but that's more Venusian because it's skin and beauty. So, you know, again, that's a bit of doctrine of signature, isn't it? So
it. And
what the plant, what you feel, what you connect to the plant, and you know, there's
yes,
dual rulerships that happen where you know, we. So yeah, yeah, I feel comfortable with that fig association and Venus as well.
yeah, I can just see the two, but you know, only good things could come from figs and fig trees, as far as I'm concerned. Therefore, both benefics must be involved with it, with fig trees.
And the sweetness, you know, from Venus, you know, we think Libra and that connection to sweet things, you know.
Yes, indeed. And just you've just given me ideas for what to do with my fig leaves that I had never come across, which is rather wonderful. So, what I'm hearing from you is that we can use the knowledge of the qualities of the herbs and the connection with the planets to help balance out different aspects of feeling that we might have, moods that we might have, as well as the actual physical stuff that might be going on in our lives. And that, you know, that's good. That's a good knowledge to have.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, again, it's just because of kind of, you know, registration and all this malarkey that I'm involved with as a naturopath that I'm a little bit cautious in bringing in quite, you know, openly to clients the astrology part. I'm sure there are other herbalists that are very open with it, and that's probably going to be my journey in the future. But I think, you know, people connecting with you know, the doctrine of signatures, which you mentioned earlier, and just getting to understand that how that resonance happens with plants and astrological rulerships, and your own health and well-being, you know, like mint is, you know, it's a cooling herb, and but it's actually Venus ruled, you know, it's not a moon, it's a Venus ruled herb. And historically mint was really in the UK there's a strain of mint called Mitcham mint, which is part of the peppermint family. There was 500 acres growing in Mitcham. Yeah, it was a big supply. Mitcham, Carshalton, and parts of Croydon in more ancient times were big growers of peppermint. And, you know, we know it as a cooling herb because, you know, the Berbers and the, you know, Arab people drink mint tea and it's boiling hot there. But in terms of Culpeper, he said it's ruled by Venus, but specifically Libra, and that mint is good for like kidney stones. You know, so you know, if you're a Libran person, that might be something that would be easy for you to include in your everyday life, you know, if you're the sort of person as a Libran who is prone to renal caliculi and it's in the family, then you could easily include that. It's not a herb that interacts with any pharmaceutical medicine. But again, I'm not giving any clinical advice. I'm not here to give advice. But yeah, so there are ways that this can be utilized by people in their everyday lives.
Good. I like that very much. Anita, you've given us a great deal of food for thought. If people want to find out more about your work, how do they do that?
So my website is www.multidimensionalhealing.co.uk. And the reason it's called Multidimensional Healing, my health and wellness business, is because I'm a naturopath. So I'm a qualified herbalist, nutritionist. So I deal with the physical body and emotional complaints. I'm also an astrologer, so that I deal with sort of psychological aspects of life, you know, life decisions. And then I'm a shamanic healer as well. Yeah. So I run a monthly shamanic circle in Balham. So I deal with the spirits. That's the multi-dimensions. And yeah, people can contact me via that website, or, you know, give me a bell. My mobile phone details are on that website. And yeah, they can book in free 15-minute calls with me via the website, or just give me a random call if they've got any questions about herbs, nutrition, astrology, and shamanism.
Thank you very much. That's a wonderful toolkit that you've got there. Thank you for your time.
And thanks for interviewing me, Anna Isabel.
And thank you all for watching. And until next time, goodbye.